and welcome to South Jersey in Focus. I'm your host, Veronica Dudo. On this week's episode, we talk to a doctor who is part of a medical team from Cooper University Healthcare that is providing essential medical education in East Africa. Plus, an expert joins us to review the Department of Justice's new digital accessibility compliance standards that will be rolled out over the next 2 years. A medical team from Cooper University Healthcare recently returned from East Africa, where they worked to provide essential medical education and support. This initiative is part of Cooper's ongoing commitment to global health outreach, enhancing medical training and resources in underserved areas. Their work not only impacts local healthcare capabilities, but also enriches the team's experiences and skills. Here to discuss their work and its importance is Dr. Jason Bardock, medical intensivist with Cooper University Healthcare. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
So first, let's start with what inspired Cooper University Healthcare to start the medical outreach program like the one in Tanzania?
It's a good question. It started with a call for help, and I think was followed by a call to action from our medical director, Nithin Puri. Um, you know, just to give a little bit of background, Tanzania is a very large country in East Africa, about 67, almost 70 million people. And Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, which is a huge city of about 6 million people, uh, sort of coming off of the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic and looking internally, at a need to build critical care infrastructure because they realized very quickly to serve a community that size, they did not have the number of intensivists. The medical training and background to run a high intensity intensivist program within the country. So the major teaching institution, Muhas Mbili Hospital, and a very special doctor, Sibtain Moldina, started looking for people that they could reach out to for help. And they looked in a prominent medical journal and scanned for all of the critical care programs that have an international reputation. Landed on Cooper, reached out to Dr. Nithin Puri, asked for help, and he called us to action. So that's really where the inspiration for this came from, was to go out to a place and help support and build critical care infrastructure.
Now, you recently returned. Can you share with our audience a little bit of what you experienced while you were there?
Well, we've been going for the last 3 years, so we just returned from our third trip. And the goal was, you know, to try to support the community there by giving something that was sustainable, something long lasting. Like a lot of medical mission trips, sort of regardless of how much money you have to spend, you go out to these communities, you bring equipment, you bring some knowledge, and unfortunately, when you leave, a lot of that knowledge leaves with you. So, the big part of our program over the last 3 years was to build something that was sustainable. And because we have a reputation for training medical intensivists, we have one of the oldest critical care training programs in the country here at Cooper. We mirrored a lot of that training over the last 3 years to kind of have a graduated, training pathway for them, to provide them with the tools that they need to have a sustainable and durable critical care infrastructure.
What were some of the key challenges the medical team faced during the visit?
Yeah, I think to go back to my previous point, the biggest challenge was to have something that was durable and long lasting. The last thing that we wanted to do was to go down there, inspire, provide knowledge, but then quickly not leave, and then them not have the tools in order to carry out, their internal build, or to have something that was long lasting and durable. So the biggest challenge for us was to sort of build a program that we could leave there, and that we could go back every year and build on top of. So for the last 3 years, providing actually online and virtual education before we went out for our very first trip. And we do that monthly here, and we have continued that monthly sort of didactic education series for the last 3 years. And then with that, you wanted to kind of inspire not just critical care physicians or physicians interested in critical care, but all providers, nursing, and the multidisciplinary team that's required to carry out critical care services, regardless of where you do it, here in the States or abroad. So we wanted to sort of set a goal or something for them to achieve, which is, through this coursework that we've been doing, through a certification, through the fundamentals of critical care support course. So we started with, online didactics. Then we set a goal for sort of a certification or something achievable for the people who were going to invest in critical care. And then with that, we wanted to sort of graduate, over the last 3 years to more advanced learning and hands-on training, which we were able to do through our very first critical care conference series that we've done for the last 2 years. And in the end, you want to, provide and teach the teachers so that they have their own faculty who can continue to run these courses and then continue to build on this education, which we were able to do, providing certification for Sibtain Moldina to be the longstanding director for fundamentals of critical care support there in Dar es Salaam, and for Dar es Salaam and Tanzania to be only the second country in sub-Saharan Africa to offer that education. So that the biggest challenge was to kind of come up with something that we could leave, that would be durable, and that would inspire them to be independent, right? So that when we come back, it's not about delivering something that is purely a Cooper product, but to build on something that's collaborative, that's a Cooper and Tanzania product, which we've been able to do for the last 3 years.
So, just following up a little bit on that, how does providing medical education in East Africa benefit the local healthcare system long term?
Well, critical care as a specialty has been growing even in America over the last 10 years. It's certainly a new specialty within a place like Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. For a healthcare system that's very large, like the National Hospital that we've been working collaboratively with, over 1,000 beds. They have over 100 ICU beds, but only a handful of ICU providers. So, like the work people have been doing globally to enhance, mental health or emergency access, critical care sort of falls right in line with that, we can achieve better outcomes for the country when it comes to patients who face critical illness by imparting education on how to do that properly. And Cooper has a reputation internationally as sort of being trailblazers in critical care medicine. And we want to give them access to that knowledge so that they can grow and be inspired and run best practices within their own community. And I think that gives patients the best opportunity to survive, an emergency. And it also, inspires, physicians and nurses within that community to learn new and innovative medical practices. So that has always been the mission of Cooper, whether it's local here in Camden or international in Tanzania.
Can you describe some of the specific training or support that the Cooper team offered on this trip?
Yeah. So, we started with online learning where we would speak to their physicians, their sort of house staff residents, who go through medical training there, as well as their nurses, and everyone invested in both the emergency medicine side of what they do, the trauma medicine of what they do, and then throughout the medical hospital. We started with that online education and then built that into a certification through the fundamentals of critical care support, which is part of the Society of Critical Care Medicine, which is an international society for intensivists. We were able to provide that certification. And then through the last 2 years, we've actually delivered the very first critical care conference series in Tanzania. And that would provide, sort of enhanced or advanced didactic education, as well as hands-on training for some of the procedures that we do. And then lastly, being able to have sort of a durable, independent critical care curriculum through Mimbili Hospital, I think has been one of the more rewarding parts of this, to see them continue to teach independent of the Cooper educators.
How does this kind of international work influence the professional growth of participating healthcare providers?
Well, I mean, we all have a mission to be what people need when they need it most. And I think that's what we're called to do, and certainly what we're called to do in critical care. And I think we want everyone to see the specialty for what it is. And by doing that, there's a tremendous personal reward, to inspiring others, and hoping that, even through one encounter, you could save one life. But at the same time, inspiring the next generation to sort of pick this mission up and run with it, whether it's, like I said, local here in Camden or international in Tanzania. So, it's been a gift, given to us by Dr. Puri, through this call to action.
Are there plans to expand this outreach or collaborate with other countries in the future?
I sure hope so. We've been growing, as a team. It's not just Cooper intensivists. We've grown to bring in other regional critical care programs that are interested, as well as a multidisciplinary approach. So we've had, intensivists, neurointensivists, subspecialized types of critical care medicine. We've had neurosurgeons, and everyone looking to provide an enhanced skill set and introduce people to opportunities to care for others that they may have never seen before. So we've been collaborating regionally with other hospitals like George Washington University and Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, and they've come with us on these trips. And we continue to expand, our scope of practice beyond the medical intensivist, in the hopes to, grow with the teaching staff in Tanzania, and then maybe march north and south up the coast of East Africa. That would be incredible.
Such a impactful and really important story about your work. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your recent trip.
Well, thanks for having me.
The Department of Justice has announced new digital accessibility compliance standards under the Americans with Disabilities Act for public entities serving large and small populations. Soon, public institutions must meet updated web content accessibility guidelines to ensure digital content is accessible to individuals using assistive technology. Failure to comply could lead to penalties, including loss of public funding and legal action. Joining me now is Jesse Kurtz, an expert in digital accessibility, to discuss the implications of these new standards. Hi, Jesse. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
So, first, let's start with can you explain what the updated web content and accessibility guidelines standards entail for public entities?
Sure. These guidelines have been around for years, and they're actually established by the international body of experts who support the internet in general. So, a lot of us just take for granted that we can go on the internet, we rely on the internet, and all of the technical standards that are related to those interactions that happen on the internet are set by this international group called the World Wide Web Consortium. So, one of their guidelines or set of guidelines is this WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Now, what is new is that the federal government has stepped in through the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in the Title II section, which is the part of the ADA that deals with public entities, so we're talking state government, local government, county authorities, public hospitals, public schools, etc., they all have to be compliant with these standards. And now, effective April of 2026 or April of 2027, depending on what size the constituency is of these groups, they're going to have to meet these technical standards, the WCAG standards, which are going to ensure that the digital experiences of people with disabilities go smoother and don't fall into instances of discrimination.
Now, you just mentioned that deadline and it is approaching. Why is it significant for compliance?
In one sense, April of 2026 is a ways away, right? It's over a year from now, so it's not tomorrow. But given the nature of what these organizations are going to have to do, it's very important and meaningful. I could kind of sum it up really like in three different respects. For one, the documents and web presence that these public entities have, they need to become compliant on or before April 26th. So it's almost that idea of just kind of getting there to the challenge. Part two of this is organizations have to come up with workflows, or in other words, when they think to communicate with their residents or with their clients or patients or customers or students, depending on which type of organization it is, they need to think about not only getting the word out effectively through a communication strategy, but that the way they're creating these Word documents or these Excel sheets or PowerPoints, videos, audio, or website edits have to be done with an accessible formatting. And in some cases, it's really like an alien thought. It's something that people aren't used to incorporating into the way in which they get the word out. And to be honest, public entities struggle in general with communicating their message to their constituents. So there's normally this almost like two steps behind position that public entities find themselves in with communicating in general. Add a new mandate for making sure that the communication is accessible to the mix. And I think that adds another layer of challenge. And the third piece is, as if that weren't enough, right? When you go to your local government website and you go to pay your taxes, or you go there to report a pothole or something along those lines, oftentimes those are not homegrown software systems. They're not things that somebody working for XYZ Township or the regional authority for sewerage in this county designed themselves. They normally buy a software package from a vendor. Well, one of the other issues that we're going to have to come to terms with is a lot of these products, in fact, most of them, are not accessible and not accessible to that standard that's in the rule. So there's this third piece where public entities are going to need to engage these companies. Some are small, some are large, some will be responsive, some won't be as responsive, and have this idea of accessible procurement, or basically buying things that are accessible. So it's really, there's three pieces to it. And that's what makes it very, I'd say, urgent for people to start working on now. And one other piece, Veronica, I should mention is that the deadline is actually April of 2027 if you're dealing with a smaller town or a smaller organization. The key point is 50,000. So if you have 50,000 or more constituents, that live in your town or that are in your service area as a school, et cetera, then it's April of 2026. But if you have less than 50,000 constituents, then you have until April of 2027. So in some sense, we're 1 or 2 years away from the deadline. But in reality, the time is now to be preparing, to bring in some subject matter experts, to start having those conversations with staff as well as with companies, with vendors, just to make the plan and start working that plan.
Now, as you mentioned, depending on the entity, it could be 1 or 2 years away. But having worked in this space for a long time, what is your analysis for this to actually get done in that time frame? Is that possible?
So I think that there's a lot that can be done, and there will be a great net impact to our residents, to our neighbors that have disabilities and that need to interact with digital systems. There's going to be a big variable in the sense that just how much will this regulation and these conversations with public entities and companies lead to accessible products come April of 2026 or April of 2027. And so um, the Department of Justice is still working out the finer points of what an exception process will look like. I can definitely foresee a situation where an organization, let's say they get 90% of the way or 95% of the way, and there's a portion there that, despite their best efforts, they just weren't able to find a specialized piece of equipment, software in this case, that meets the standard. I think there will be some type of temporary provision for that. But with the exception of that, I think that while it's a lot of work, I do think that organizations are going to be able to get the websites, the documents, the video and audio that they have already on their websites and such accessible, and then build up that training, that expertise in house. So it'll probably be like anything else we do, right? Some people do excellent, some people will not do as well. But I don't see it as by any means as being impossible. And in fact, just like we take for granted that a sidewalk should have a curb cut at an appropriate place because somebody with a wheelchair may need that corner, we will start thinking of the internet and our digital experiences in the same way that in effect will have digital curb cuts for our brothers and sisters who are blind and require that type of guaranteed formatting, so that way a screen reader can read to them what a lot of us sighted people take for granted is on the screen. And the same applies to folks who are deaf, folks who have cognitive impairments, as well as when you run into situations like rotary type disabilities, and you rely on, it could be a pointer on the cheek or something that's keyboard based in order to navigate. Those folks, they deserve to have a digital environment that is welcoming, and that provides a basic level of access. We're not there yet as an internet and as a community. And so the kind of the positive side of this rule is that it's going to force something that's not necessarily profitable, right? A lot of times we make changes based on how profitable software can be, et cetera. And in this case, it's going to force folks to provide that type of humane, accessible environment digitally for residents, for citizens that have disabilities.
A really fantastic way to explain this upcoming digital mandate. Now, you've been working in this space for more than a decade. How did you get involved?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. It was something that I had, pursued a career in technology. I have a master's in computer science, and I was doing more general web work and like technical support for digital marketing. And I ended up going to work for Atlantic Cape Community College. And what had happened to them is right before I joined, and unbeknownst to me, right, it was a big surprise. There were a few students who were blind that, along with the National Federation for the Blind, took legal action against the college. And what happened was they settled a consent order or consent decree where the college committed to meet very aggressive digital accessibility standards. And from the time I started working there, I ended up being kind of the point person on the digital side for implementing these standards and helping to coordinate the program. And I really grew to love it. It became something that was both technologically challenging, but also very fulfilling because I got to meet a lot of students who benefited from having these changes in the digital materials. And just like every person is unique, even you get a handful of people that share the same disability, their digital experience and what they need to have an optimal experience varies. So it became very, both, as I mentioned, both challenging and rewarding. So I fell into that and I haven't looked back. I've become very well versed in it. I've been a subject matter expert on this topic at the League of Municipalities conference. I'm going to be speaking there this year about it. And now I just kind of make it my career, my life's mission to help organizations become compliant. And then I think once that calms down and a lot of people are at compliance level, my goal is to like really actually take it to the next level. That compliance should basically be the ground floor. We should work with folks to do extraordinary and exceptional experiences for people that have disabilities. Just like there's whole elements of digital strategy that go to generally, getting people to buy more and having like wow experiences with web portals and apps and such. We need to do that with a mind towards disability and, more importantly, towards accessibility for as many users as possible.
Jesse, thank you so much for coming on and explaining what's going on with the DOJ and, of course, these new compliance. Really an important story.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Thanks for watching South Jersey in Focus. I'm your host, Veronica Dudo. We look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to watch more on New Jersey at ONNJ.com.